There are many stories about mysterious happenings that occur on or around the blood moon. I've decided to chronicle several of those stories, so today I offer you my first. This is about a strange town that apparently depends on the blood moon for its very existence. I hope you enjoy. They say if you take the old highway past Hollow Creek on the night of a blood moon, you might see it, a town that isn't on any map, glowing faintly red under the moonlight like it's been dipped in blood. I used to think it was just one of those urban legends, you know, the kind you tell around campfires to scare your friends. But that was before I found the journal. It belonged to my brother, Liam. He vanished 2 years ago without a trace. Police chalked it up to a runaway case, said he was an adult. Maybe he wanted to disappear. But Liam was always grounded, more than I ever was. He wouldn't just leave, not without telling me. The journal was tucked behind a false panel in his old dresser. I found it when I was clearing out our childhood home. It was filled with frantic, paranoid writing, a descent into obsession, pages of maps, sketches of strange symbols, and references to a place called Eldon's Hollow, a town that, according to Liam, only appears during the blood moon. I would have dismissed it, grief-induced madness, if it hadn't been for the final entry, just 6 words. Find me beneath the red sky. So, when the next blood moon was forecast, 2 years to the day since Liam vanished, I packed a bag, loaded up my car, and drove out to Hollow Creek. The air was thick, unnaturally so. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. I passed the dried-up creek bed and kept going. And that's when I saw it. Right where the forest should have been. A town. Quiet and dimly glowing under the crimson sky. No GPS signal, no roads. Just a crooked wooden arch that read, "Welcome to Eldon's Hollow, established 1673. The buildings are what you would call colonial style, too pristine to be old and too aged to be new. Candles flickered in the windows, not electric lights, candles, and yet no people. I stepped onto the cobbled street. My phone was useless, dead despite being fully charged. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but then I heard the bell. It rang once, low and hollow, from the church at the center of town. I followed the sound, passing shop fronts with mannequins in antique clothing. Their glassy eyes seemed to follow me. One of them blinked. I was sure of it, but when I turned back, it hadn't moved. The church doors were slightly open. Inside, the pews were empty, but the altar was freshly set. A blood-red cloth draped over the surface. On it sat a single item, a lantern, old, brass, and pulsing faintly with red light. I picked it up. The instant I did, I felt watched. Not just by the mannequins, not just by the town, but by something older. I walked back outside and froze. The town wasn't empty anymore. Figures stood along the street, watching silently. They wore old-fashioned clothes, faces obscured by white masks that resembled stretched porcelain. Their eyes, the only visible part, were human, terrified, hollow. Some looked like they were crying. One of them stepped forward and held out a note. Trembling, I took it. 3 words were scrawled in blood. "He's still here." I tried to ask them who they meant, Liam, but their mouths opened in unison, and from their throats came a sound I'll never forget. Not speech, not a scream, a kind of chanting, like reversed whispers layered over thunder. The blood moon deepened in color, the sky cracked with a soundless quake, and the ground beneath Eldon's hollow began to breathe. Literally, the cobblestones rose and fell like the chest of a sleeping beast. I ran. I don't even remember where to, just away from the church, the chanting, and the watchers. That's when I saw him. Liam. He was standing at the well near the town square, thinner and pale, and with eyes that no longer belonged to the brother that I knew. He didn't speak. He just pointed down the well. "I can't leave," he finally whispered. "Not while it's awake." And then he vanished. One blink and he was gone, as though he'd never been there at all. I had a choice: climb down into the well or leave and never return. But I knew, if I left now, I'd never find him again. So I climbed. The descent was longer than it should have been. My flashlight flickered. The air grew colder and the stone walls began to change. They weren't stone anymore. They were like flesh, pulsing and veined. At the bottom, I found a chamber carved with the same symbols from Liam's journal. In the center, a massive heart. Yes, a heart. Suspended by roots, beating in rhythm with the chanting above. And beneath it was Liam, or what was left of him. His body was intact, but he was bound by tendrils, his face half-masked in that porcelain horror. He looked up at me with tearful eyes. "I kept it asleep for as long as I could," he said. "But now you've brought the lantern. It's awake again." The ground shook violently. The heart above began to beat faster. Something screamed through the chamber walls, a scream that wasn't a sound, but a thought, a desperate, hungry thought. "Feed me." I ran out of the chamber, and I climbed up the wall with strength I didn't know I had. As I reached the top, I saw the townspeople collapsing. Their masks were cracking, revealing hollowed skulls beneath. The blood moon began to fade, and so did the town. By the time I reached my car, Eldon's Hollow was gone. Trees stood where buildings had been. My phone turned back on. It was 3:33 a.m. I checked the passenger seat. The lantern was still there, and it's still glowing. Thanks for listening to another Dark Veil tale. I hope you enjoyed this Blood Moon story, and I look forward to bringing more of them to you in the future. In the meantime, feel free to check out more of my stories, or even one of my playlists. I'm compiling them just for you.